The world of relational leadership is tricky, nuanced, incredibly vulnerable, and often a bit like diving into the unknown. So, why would we venture into it? That is what we will explore together in this episode of Doodle-to-Doing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doodle-to-Doing. I'm your host, Karen Light, Doodle Empress, aka artist and creative coach at How Doodle, where I show people how to awaken and lead like an artist in their life and work through the modality of doodling. On this Doodlecast, I invite thought-provoking guests to chat and doodle with me. I encourage you to grab something to doodle with and doodle on to awaken your inner artist. This creative process can reveal your own insights, ideas, and inspired action. What is your leadership style? We've heard of many common categories that you might fall under, such as autocratic, coaching, democratic, laissez-faire, servant, and visionary. But have you heard about the relational style? Indeed defines it as a model of leadership that suggests the effectiveness of a leader relates to their ability to develop positive relationships within an organization. Well, I'm excited to dive into this deeper with my guest, Dennise Kowalczyk, to dive deeper through conversation and doodling. We'll get clearer on what it is and what it's not, what it takes to develop this style, and the possible impacts it could have in our workplaces. Hello, Dennise.
Hi, Karen. It's great to be here. I'm super excited. I got my paper, I got my pen. I'm ready to doodle.
Perfect. Let me tell them just a few more things about you and we'll dive in.
Okay.
So Dennise is a multi-hyphenate second act entrepreneur who provides online marketing strategy and content creation to women-owned businesses. She's a brand ambassador of building a big life, one small adventure at a time, and the founder of Dames Who Do RI and Dames Who Dine. I said RI, but I bet it's Rhode Island. Yeah.
It is.
It's Rhode Island, a women's social group that explores the plethora of offerings in the Ocean State. She is also an inspiring author and filmmaker who dabbles in background acting. Dennise loves to make new friends, so you can connect with her on Instagram at The Adventure Broad. Welcome again. And I just have to say that when I read your biography, I love that you put in there what you're aspiring to. I think that's a really fun addition to your biography.
Thank you. You know, in one regards, doing a lot of things can sort of be the bane of your existence because you can't really focus. But I would never change the variety because variety is the spice of life. So I like to do a bunch of different things. And also the aspiring part really speaks to learning. That's one of my values. Is constantly learning. I've never written a book. I've never made a film. So just having some new stuff to do to learn about the craft or the art or the science, it really motivates me. It just really fills my life up a lot.
I love it. And I think it really speaks to our topic today too. Like, it's one of the things in relationships that we sometimes forget, that all these people that we're around and that we're working with, they're all aspiring to things. And, remembering that, asking them about that, being in touch with that can really help us as we lead others and lead ourselves.
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. That's really fun. Dennise, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second. When it comes to our topic today, which of these do you think would be especially relevant, or which one is jumping out to you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So with our topic around relational leadership, I'm going to say, enjoy the process.
Enjoy the process. And can you say a few words about why you find that to be very important?
Well, because I am a process-oriented person, to be truthful. But I think anything that you do embark in life, it is a process, especially if you're not familiar with it, or you think you might be aware of something or familiar, but really sort of pausing and going through a process to identify it. Yeah. So I think those are the two things that pop up for me.
Yeah, I really love that too. I think, when I think about working with people, we can get very results oriented. What are you doing for me? What am I doing for you? What are we supposed to have achieved? And we can often get frustrated with the process, even though that the process always involves some hiccups, right? So how do we enjoy the hiccups instead of always being frustrated by them time and time again? Like, well,
And
we know they're going to
surprise.
happen.
Right. To your point, I mean, why be surprised? It's part of the journey. So it's like, okay, there's going to be something happening here. It's part of the process of the experience and learning. So why the heck not?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna put my intention out there too with this conversation. I'm gonna go with play today. Play and be silly. Sometimes we get very serious in these kinds of conversations, and I want to, interject some levity, not just because it's enjoyable, but also because that is what opens us up to fresh, new ideas, the exploration, and enjoying the process sometimes. So they go together quite beautifully. Okay, so it's time to warm up. Dennise, just like many of you listening, does not draw regularly. So don't worry.
I'm a people person.
Yeah. The spirit of a doodle says nothing about good talent or needing to be an artist, right? And I'm going to lead you and help you warm up. So if you're listening, go ahead and grab something to doodle on and doodle with. And we're just going to do one quick little warm up doodle. So, and Dennise and I are going to demonstrate. So Dennise, in any way that feels good to you, whatever you interpret it to be, just do a squiggle on your paper, just in like 5 seconds. And then hold it up. And since we're, then hold it up. Yes. So we both have beautiful squiggles. Do they look exactly the same? Nope. And they're not supposed to, but we both have beautiful squiggles. So while I'm talking for the next few minutes, what I want you to do, Dennise, is just play with your squiggle, however you want to play with it. And everybody listening, this can now be a go-to doodle for you. So if you are in the middle of a doodle prompt and you're like, I don't know what the heck to doodle, just draw some squiggles. You still get the benefits of doodling, and you keep your mind, your creative mind, open while you're doing that. It doesn't have to make sense what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be particularly clever or quote unquote good to get a lot of benefits. And feel free to doodle the entire time that Dennise and I are speaking today. Doodling helps you to pay attention, and it also helps you to retain information. So I know a lot of our listeners enjoy doodling, writing some words in there, doing their version of doodle notes, whatever feels good to you. I hope you enjoyed this little doodle warm up, squiggling around your paper. I sure have. How does it coming out for you over there?
I'm doing great. I'm listening. I appreciate the prompts and the suggestions. And did the ding, ding, ding bell just go off?
Yeah, we're just warming up whenever you're ready. Here's what my doodle got to my little squiggles. Oh, it looks like little stars along the way to me. The wave. Is it say the wave?
The wave of, and yeah, dot, dot, dot.
Dot, dot, dot. Ooh, we're on a cliffhanger now, folks. Well, let's see what happens with the wave. Usually what I do with an interview is start with a question, but I want to start here with one little doodle because I think it will help as we dive into the question. So over this next minute, what I'm going to invite everybody to do is to do a quick doodle of what you imagine when I say the phrase people pleaser. Something that reminds you of people pleasing or what that's about, the feeling of it or a thing you see people doing. Just 1 minute, people pleasing. What comes out in a doodle for you? right. So people pleasing, Dennise, what came up for you?
The first thing that came to mind for people pleaser is a doormat. So there's a lady, a
Oh,
woman who is a rug.
yeah, that's
And
spectacular.
there's these feet, very big feet heading her way, and you can see she is not very happy.
She is not very happy at all. That's fantastic. I love it. It's so great too because I did something completely different, but but what you say makes complete sense to me and a really good interpretation. So here's mine, quick doodle.
Oh,
And I was just feeling that like disperse of energy, like it's going everywhere but to the person.
yes, I see
Um,
a little bit of a mild frown on that circle face in the center.
yeah, a little like, oh, and they're all happy
Oh,
because
sure.
they're getting stuff from this person, but this person's like, wait, where's me? They have like no body.
Yep.
There's no
Yeah,
hands for themselves, really. So
that's good.
So yeah, curious. You can always share with us what your doodles are for people pleasing. And that really takes us in to this first question that I want to ask you, Dennise. So we're talking about relational leadership, as the title of our Doodlecast says. So I'd love for you to, give us your definition of that and tell us how that differs from people pleasing.
Sure. So I have come to the realization, certainly in my life experience, that I don't do really anything alone, right? Everything in life, whether it's in the work environment or play environment or family environment, but today, really focusing on the business environment, um, I'm working with a bunch of different people. And it's always a collaboration, whether it's a collaboration with exchange of ideas or helping someone or someone helping me with resources. Now it's different from people pleasing, because in people pleasing, speaking more to your doodle, I think is more a visual representation to my thoughts on that. It's really about everyone else and not about my intentions of what I want to get in that experience. It's not about my hopes or my dreams. It's not about my boundaries in that circumstance. It's always about the other person's needs. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that one should never be aware of other people's needs, but that's not what people pleasing is. I think people pleasing is putting your self totally aside, but when there's two people interacting, it's not just about one person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. I think what you're speaking to is like, when we collaborate, it takes more than one person. And if you're people pleasing, it's really it's only about one person, not about two people getting something out of that relationship together, that relational dynamic that has to be there between two folks. So in relational leadership, I heard you say a couple other interesting things I think we're going to dive into in a little bit, but there is a sense of boundaries. And I like thinking about it in this first part in the sense that there's a whole person here and a whole person here. This person doesn't just like melt into that person. Like you need to stand strong in your being and also like ask the other person to do the same. I've been on the other end of that, right? Where somebody just wants to please me.
Mm.
And that never feels great either. Like in some ways it does,
Yeah, I
but in
dated a
other
few
ways,
men that way, a few men who were like that.
yeah.
That was not my preferred dynamic. Because I think when I think about it, relational, there's an equilibrium, so to speak, if you will, and it goes up and down. It's not constant,
Mhm.
but there is the syncing up, right? The
Mm.
connection, that's the relational part of it. And when you think of leadership, we're in a society that's based on a lot of long running patriarchal approaches and very hierarchical. Now, I will also say I am not a consensus person, because at some point you have to make a decision. So I find myself somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. But there's still relationship in there. So even if there is a hierarchical kind of thing,
Mhm.
it isn't like they're all in vacuums. I think that's a poor way to demonstrate leadership. That's more of a power over than power with. But with relational, it is more about sometimes that person's taking more of a lead on something or making a decision or responsibility, whereas the other person might switch out and take on that role sometimes. But it's also being aware of the other person's needs too. That's the relational component of it too. So if it's, for example, working on a project and you're working with a small group, let's say, well, we don't know what's going on in that person's insides, right? In their heads, in their heart. But how do you become more aware of that so you can relate to one another to deal with the task at hand?
Mhm.
And there's could be check-in words, right?
Mhm.
Or some kind of exercise to kind of maybe shine some light on that, where people's mindset and uh, how they're feeling in that moment. Because when we're in the workplace, now I am a solopreneur, I don't have anyone in my workplace. So my workplace are my accountability partners or my other groups that I'm part of. And being relational in taking on leadership, being aware in a more virtual space is a very fascinating thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's different types of awareness depending on your workspace. And I think that's super interesting point to maybe kind of bring around as we have this conversation. Some key words that I heard you say, keywords for me. I heard equilibrium, I heard syncing up, the spectrum, where we're falling on the spectrum at any given time, power with, taking turns, and awareness of everyone's needs for better relating.
Mhm.
Um, really good stuff that you were saying there. So I think with all of that in mind, I would like to lead us in another 1 minute doodle. And this one is what your idea of a relational leader, from what you know so far, is. You could look at your people pleasing one for
Mhm.
extra fun, and how might you change that in order to make it more relational? So you can doodle on the same one if you want to, or you could start a separate one. But how might you change that first doodle to now make it a more relational type of leadership? Excited to see what came up for you. How
Okay,
did yours
ready?
transform? I'm so ready.
So I don't like to waste paper, so I just use the one sheet, but
Yeah.
it's helpful. So we remember the gal the first time she was lying down as carpet, but everyone is actually a piece of carpet, right? And they're all standing up and they're so happy because they're doing something together as opposed to walking all over each other. And the
Hmm.
sun is shining. I didn't have a chance to add birds.
I love that because so I love drawing cards every morning, and the card that I drew this morning was this woman weaving a beautiful rug, and the word on it was integration. And so, you just switched that, you just reframed that word, like rug or doormat, into something that's a lot more beautiful and integrated. And it's a craft too, to make something a beautiful rug and wear it. It's a craft. It's made up of different colors and processes and patterns and all kinds of stuff. So I love what you came up with. That's so cool.
Thank you. What did you
Yeah.
do?
So I doodled on the same one too.
Oh,
We'll
okay.
crazy with it. So, yeah, and this one, it's not just the energy isn't just going this way, it's always also coming this way, but also like they do it to each other. Like before, I was noticing that all the faces were separate. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes what happens when we're people pleasers is people become dependent on us and they don't build other supportive networks and stuff, and it like amplifies the problem. So in this way, they start reaching out to each other as well and giving back, and more
Mhm.
energy can happen. So I use these
Yeah.
really bright colors, hard to see it, but uh,
Yeah, I love it.
yeah, cool. Okay, so I love this transformation. So we're already getting a bigger view of what relational leadership can do for us. And let's go a little bit further. So one of the things I've heard you talk about is being a good relational leader requires both good inner and outer work. Like there's things to take care of on both ends. So can you talk a little bit more about that inner work? What does it take? What do we need to do and look for and practice within ourselves?
Well, self-awareness is really important. And we live in a very noisy, constant movement world.
Mm.
So, to take some time to calmly be aware of what is going on inside of you in the beginning, um, being aware of our thinking. I'm reading so many books on brain stuff right now and understanding the thinking brain and the emotional brain and the reptile brain, and when you're idle, what different parts of the brain come up and such. But the pausing, I know for me, it quiets everything. So I have like a morning practice, and I am pretty adamant. No, I am adamant about doing that because it sets up the day. So being aware with my journaling, then I meditate, then I go out and exercise, take a daily walk, because that sort of primes the pump of whether it's clever problem solving or dreaming, um, and being mindful and present in the day. I mean, I live in Providence, Rhode Island, in the West Side, and there's a lot of little gardens around here. And it's not the one track mind all the time of listening to podcasts and just zoom, zoom, zoom to get it done. Sometimes it's that, but other times it's like, I'm just going to meander, and just being aware of what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, and smiling at someone I'm passing on the street. But when I get back, I may have heard something in a podcast that is like, oh, what is that expression? When the student is ready, the teacher will come, or something like that. And I'll have a lot of moments like that during these morning walks, because on my podcasts and such. But I think it's important for us to invest in that time, because that's when we dream up those crazy wackadoodle things. And some of those things might actually become something, or it could be like, oh, that was fun to kind of imagine that I'm winning my first Oscar or
Publish
Emmy.
that first book.
Or yeah, yes, I mean, it's kind of fun to give some space to that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, because especially when I hear you talk, well, a lot of it, but something that jumped out to me was you walking around and just noticing like a garden, like
Mhm,
taking time. Like a lot of times I agree with you, like the exercise just becomes another thing to get done with on the task list. But if you can do it in such a way, especially if you're outside,
mhm,
it's like you get to practice awareness. You practice awareness. You practice focus. You practice checking in with yourself.
mhm.
And that's like a really good way to not become surprised by things later, or for things to come out sideways when you're in a tough spot with somebody else. If you I could imagine how having that practice in the morning might help you, notice, okay, I'm feeling really disappointed by this person's lack of follow-up. Oh, okay. So now I know that when I talk to them, I don't have to be snippy with them. I can maybe address the issue, right? Like,
Yeah, that's a really great point. Paying attention to your triggers
mm-hmm.
is really key when it comes to being aware. of how you are in the moment and how you are in the world. And most of the triggers are unconscious little nips and pinches and stuff like that. So the more I'm learning from the teachers, that the more you slow down, the more quiet you get through meditation or journaling or whatever the exercise is, or doodling, hello, is absolutely right. It can bring some stuff up. I'm trying to think of something specific and it's not coming right to mind, but there's a thing when you are, like, say, vacuuming or something like that, your brain is idle. And I'm not a brain scientist, nor do I play one on TV, but as I recall, there's an acronym for it, but it's like your brain is going into an idle phase, and then it's certain sections kind of click on, like, whoa, what's going on? She's idle. What were those last 40 ruminations she had rolling? Let's pull up a few of those, right? Because I noticed I was feeling great and but all of a sudden when I'm in these idle times of not really focused, these not so pleasant thoughts would come up. And then I just learned about that. I'm like, oh, it's that ADM or whatever the heck I forget the acronym is. Those multiple spots in my brain trying to activate because it's not used to that kind of rest, if you will.
That's so interesting, because I think oftentimes it's painted that these slow times, pausing and meditation and walking and journaling is supposed to just always be this pleasant, kind of experience. When in fact, the reason I think a lot of us avoid it is because we don't find it to be a very pleasant place. It's initially can be a place of discomfort and noticing things we didn't really want to notice because now we have to deal with them or feel the feelings about them. But with practice, I know for myself, maybe you could speak for yourself, but for me, with practice, it does become more peaceful and I become more comfortable with the discomfort. And it also is a longer term comfort because I address things better because I notice them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because we, to a certain degree, learn in some part of our journey as adults or humans, I should say, discomfort is to be avoided at all costs. And maybe that's more of a societal, cultural thing at this point, or also biological too. Danger, discomfort, stay away kind of thing. But that innate avoidance, I guess, is based on way back when, where you really had to pay attention because you could die, kind of thing.
Right.
But in our world, with the exception of dangerous situations, in most cases, we're not going to die because so-and-so didn't text us back, right? And I have to deal with that, right? That discomfort, being in it and learning how to navigate it and being okay, that it's like, okay, this is just yet another experience. It's another feeling. And that's okay. Pause and recognizing it, because you also don't want to repress it, because that's another thing that I've done many, many years, is just repress the uncomfortable, and it doesn't stay hidden for long.
That's when it comes up to bite you sometime, right?
Right.
Or you pay for it. I mean, I think a lot of people experience physical symptoms because of repression. I've definitely experienced physical symptoms before I learned how to deal with and express things instead of repressing them. So, and I'm not perfect at it, but I agree. I think this is such an important point, which is, learning to accept discomfort and be with it, move through it, do what you need to do, journal, walk with it, doodle with it, talk about it, because it can only help your leadership. It can only help the people that you're working with, because then you can be in uncomfortable situations with them.
Yes.
And that's where so much relationship happens, is in those uncomfortable moments, right?
Exactly. The vulnerability, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, we're going to dive into that in just a minute. And I'm also going to dive into a little nervous system thing, which I think will help at the end. So, but before we get into all that, let's do one more 1 minute doodle here. And in this one, I want you to think about what it looks like, everybody listening, for you to continue building that inner relationship with yourself. What's
Mm.
one thing that you do that you want to amplify or just really solidify in yourself? Or what is one thing you don't do that you want to start doing? How can you keep building the relationship with you? So, what came up for you in this doodle, Dennise?
Well, I thought, oh, self-awareness, expansive love for myself, and then that's of course going to radiate out to anyone or anything I come in contact with, and embracing that and holding that love.
That's so
Like,
cute. I love your
and
big inner world.
and you look, hearts. I
Hmm.
have hearts keep coming up for me today.
Hearts are awesome. Oh, I love it. It's so great. I love that expands it, like take it just taking time to expand that inner world, taking time to
Yeah.
expand the inner world. Um, so I've got what came up for me is my little slow mornings.
Oh, with the
I love
sun
a slow morning. It took me a long time to let myself have them and get over the voices that told me I should be hyper productive by 7 a.m. I used to work in schools and, be up way before one should at a school with a lot of children. So,
Yeah.
but now I really relish in a slow morning. I think it makes my whole day feel better. I don't take a meeting before 10 a.m. Judge me if you will, but I have learned to not judge myself and that I'm best when I don't talk to anybody for a while or just,
Yeah.
relax, maybe say hey to my cats and my partner a little bit. But
Yeah.
I like to read. I like to listen to things, mostly, calm music. I like yoga. I like, sometimes I dance in the mornings. Sometimes I go for a walk, but not when it's just blazing hot out. I hate it.
Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah.
it.
Don't blame you.
Doodle, color, write, journal. I used to keep a really strict structure, but I've just let myself choose of the things that work that morning.
I
So
love that.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
really
it's
sets
interesting.
me up.
I often hoped I'd have a little more less structure, like on the weekends, for example. So, but my practice, so that's sort of the double-edged sword, right? I have this practice that's so ingrained that I don't dare venture away from that practice. But I'm thinking, God, wouldn't it be kind of cool on a Sunday, get up and not get out of my pajamas until noon and pitter patter around and not immediately go out and do my walk and da 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 da. And just, oh, I'm writing that down on my
Look
to-do
at that
list.
inspiration happening.
I'm not kidding
Yes,
you. That's a
yes.
Sunday fun day. Oh yeah. PJs in
What
the
I love
morning.
about this conversation is just that, like, people think they're often failing if they're not always following the exact same structure. But, like you started off saying with about your multi hyphenated, life is that like
Mhm.
variety can help sustain us in the long run. So finding what works for you, that beautiful mixture, that beautiful balance of structure and variety of routine and scrapping the routine, like what works for you is just such an important
Yeah.
thing to keep being in process with.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited because that's going to challenge me to stop. That's it. Rhythm and routine can be really beneficial because you can develop
Oh,
some good
yes.
habits.
Yes.
But what happens is you get rigid, right? That could happen. So it's trying to find like, oh, I got to do a little disruptor every so often for me.
Yeah, I like that. A disruptor. Ooh, that would be a fun thing to doodle about, or even doodle out what a disruptor looks like. Okay,
Yeah.
banking that one away. Thanks for that inspiration. So let's flip it now. We just talked about the inner that we got to take care of, but what do we need to take care of in the outer worlds to be an effective relational leader?
Well, I used this word earlier, and that's boundaries. And personally, I've been really doing a lot of work on boundaries, and it's talk about uncomfortable because people do not say, oh, thank goodness you used that boundary on me right now.
Shucks, they don't. Yeah, no, not my experience
Right.
either.
So, but it is a line, right? That figurative line that is important to establish at times when it's needed. And also not forgetting your voice and expressing what you want. And drives me nuts when people, and I shouldn't be worried about other people. I should only be worried about myself, but I'm just going to say it drives me nuts when people will not just ask for what they want. It's really easy. Really, it is. I want to go there for dinner, or I don't want to go there for dinner, or I want to use that pen, or can I have the ketchup, please? I mean, it's just interesting how challenging that is. So using,
Especially, yeah, I mean, I could, and we were just talking about people pleasing. And if you're in that mindset, like you're out of practice. Like you were out of practice for asking for your wants and needs.
yeah,
And like, I remember when I first started this work, somebody asked me something that I wanted and I was totally clueless, and cause my response was always like, oh, I'm good with whatever you want to do is fine with me. And, to a degree that's true. Like I can go with the flow pretty easy. I don't have there's things that are just totally fine with, but the point is that no matter what was happening, I would say that. And
yeah, yeah,
and I was so out of practice that like, I remember it was hard for me to ask somebody to turn the AC down in a car, like I have this very vivid memory of that, of being in the back seat on a road trip with a bunch of people and being like, I'm really cold. And it was a realization of like, oh, I'm not asking for that. Like, cause I had started doing the work and it was so uncomfortable to ask for that. So I'm coming from a
yeah.
pretty rough spot with all of that. And like, but with practice,
It's always a practice, and it's a
so empowering.
lifelong practice. I mean, just not too long ago, I was getting my oil changed in my car, and they were playing this awful music, blasting it. And I'm like, why don't you get up and either turn it off or go ask, can we turn that off, please? But I didn't. But another woman, an employee, she had had enough, and she came out and she saw me sitting there. She goes and turns it off. She goes, that must have been driving you nuts. And I said, yes, it was. And then I'm thinking, why didn't I just ask to change it? And so there is a book called Just Ask for It. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's two women scientists. It's a two-parter, the science behind and the societal societal expectations around women not asking for things. And then, okay, the hell with that. We're going to start asking. And then I did this years ago. Some other scientists, women scientists, they're brilliant, were talking about this. Super smart women, yet could not ask for what they wanted in the workplace. I know it's not that easy, especially women scientists in that culture. It's a little challenging.
Yeah, there are always challenges, right? Yep.
The exercises were so much fun, like spending a week just asking for the wildest things. And sometimes people be like, no. But some people, they would say,
But you got to ask. I know that's the other thing. Like just practice. See, the worst people say is no.
exactly. And I do it now, and it's an exercise. Like I wanted to do a trade for something, and I went to the person and I said, well, instead of paying for that, How about if I do a trade? And they said no. I'm like, okay, onward. You wouldn't know.
But I asked. I
You
had a
gotta
recent
ask.
experience with this too. So one of my favorite artist writers is Sark. I love
Oh my God, I
her.
interviewed her.
Okay, well, now we're going to have a whole conversation about that in a second because I'm so jealous in this space and time. But
I
so
have a
I've
fun story
been in
for you.
love
Go
with
ahead.
her for like 25 years, and
Uh-huh.
found her at my senior year of high school, which was a very good time to find Sark. My goodness, this is before the internet and everything, so these things she was writing about, like nobody spoke about them, but I was like, oh, I'm not alone, like it was just so cool. So I recently been on a Sark kick again, watched an
Uh-huh.
interview with her, and she's like, you got to ask for what you want. You got to ask, and you got to ask bad, and you got to ask again, and you got to fail at asking, and you just have to keep asking about the things you really want. So I called her on her inspiration line because she still has it. It's still amazing. She still has her inspiration line, old school recording of her, talking to you. And then you can talk if you want to, or just listen. And I asked to work with her for like super cheap. I didn't hear a response back, but the act of asking like shifted something in me, like on a deeper
Power.
level. Yeah. It's like, I deserve this. When I ask, it means I deserve this,
You're advocating for
worthy of
yourself.
it. And so
Yes.
like I had practiced asking and gotten better in like daily life, but this felt like a much bigger thing. Oh, I'm going to ask some like in my world celebrity, you know,
Someone you admire.
to take a huge pay cut and work with someone like me, and it shifts things when you ask. So it's not always about the answer. It's about the action of doing it.
And it's about the process.
The process, back to our intentions.
So can I tell you my little Sark story?
Yes, please do.
So this was like in the mid 90s when I lived in Portland, Oregon. I worked at a community radio station,
Oh, that's
KVO.
right. I forgot you worked in Portland or lived in Portland and worked in Portland, but lived.
Did you ever listen to KVO, the hippie
I,
station?
I've seen stuff from them on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's still around,
Yeah.
not quite a hippie station anymore, if you will, but that's what its roots are. But I remember Sark came in and I got to interview Sark. And as I recall, I had the one book. I don't know if she always makes her books this way. So I get the connection because playful colors and doodles and drawings and this,
Yep.
not your typical book. My daughter, who's 19 now, she was about probably 3 at the time. She kind of dismantled the whole book. And I'm like, sorry, Sark.
Which
But in
Sark would love.
yeah, totally. But I remember Sark said to me, to the listeners and to me, it's very important to be in love with yourself. So
Mm.
Dennise, I want you to say right now, I am so in love with myself. And it's like you could almost hear the entire city of Portland stop. Only the engineer was looking like, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And I'm like, and I hesitated.
Of course.
He's
Yeah.
like, come on, I know you can do it. And so I went and said, I am so in love with myself. And wow, it was
Oh,
a very powerful moment, empowering, because
yeah.
we're not taught to say that about ourselves. And so my other doodle, that big heart,
Yeah.
being love. But I will also say, as far as the question with the external, how this shows up out in the external world, is curiosity is also
Mm.
like what's going on here when you're interacting with someone,
Mm.
and getting curious and not doing the making the assumption. And
Mhm.
never be small,
Mm.
never shrink yourself out in the world. Be
Mhm.
as big and bold as you are on the inside,
Mhm.
because then that also expands how much that love and that good energy that you can put out into the world as well. And
Oh,
who doesn't like a whole lot of love?
everybody needs and wants that, right? Everybody. So let's doodle about this outer world
Okay.
portion of it. Um, there were a few things that you said that I wrote down. I wrote down boundaries. I wrote down having your voice, expressing, asking for what you want, curiosity, and not playing small.
Mhm.
So those are bold outer world actions to to embody, to think about, to practice, which one of those are resonating the most for you? And do a quick doodle of you stepping into that a little bit braver, a little bit more.
So what are the options again? Boundaries?
Boundaries, using your voice, expressing yourself, asking for what you want, curiosity, not playing small. Some of those overlap. So just
Okay.
whatever
Okay.
resonates for you.
Got it.
I'm excited to see what you got going on over there.
Okay. All right. So big person, little earth, just yelling it all out there. See that big mouth open?
Yeah.
Fearless, big mouth open. But,
Mm.
not always exclaiming, asking questions and reaching up and waving and saying, hey, everybody, I got something to say. You got something to say?
I'm here.
I'm right here. And
My arms
that's
are
what
open.
we want to hug.
Uh-huh.
And the world, that helps keep the world turning when we do this.
I think I was wondering what you were going to say about the arrows on the world. Another thing that pops up about that too for me was just the idea of like sort of like what you were talking about before, when there's times when we're leading the pack and sometimes other people are leading the pack, like this idea of cycling through things too. And yeah, that's kind of something interesting that kind of popped into my head when I saw that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I love that because you can't always be screaming.
Yeah. And sometimes maybe with the question mark and then the exclamation mark, sometimes you might be saying something and sometimes you might be asking something and asking for somebody else to give you help, like help, I need
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
or something too. Could be a fun way to look at it. All right, here's what came up for me.
Okay, a megaphone. Oh, do tell.
I was kind of surprised at what happened. I was thinking about a megaphone of like, just really being bold at asking for what you want and not playing small in that way. But as I did these lines, a bigger version of myself popped up on the other end of it too. So it was like amplifying like myself. And then I get to show up fully
With a
with
big
like my heart
heart
and
and
my ideas.
happy.
Um,
Oh,
it's hard to see that yellow, but there's like a light bulb
a
above my
light bulb.
head.
All right. Oh
Yeah.
my
So it
gosh.
like helped, like, that expression helped me like show up more and shine
And
more.
be bigger
Yeah.
and
Give
bolder. I
more.
love it.
I think when we fall into the people pleasing thing, like the beautiful thing underneath that is our desire to give love and to be of service to people. But when we do it with these boundaries that you just spoke to, when we do it with full expression of who we are and what we want, then we really give. Like then we actually give so much more.
And here's the thing, because we're talking about relational leadership. You are demonstrating leadership, right? In saying, I'm being who I am, whether it's establishing boundaries, not playing small, whatever. You know what? This is a safe space for you too, to be in that, whatever
Mhm.
that is, so to speak. And they say, what is it, mirroring, if you will, like, right?
Mhm.
So I think, imagine if you're in a meeting and there's a bunch of women, like half men, half women, because it's the gender differences are, apparent, you know what I mean? As far as that environment. But if I'm in a room and I am getting a sense the other women are being bold and making points and asking questions and not sitting there quietly with their hands on their lap, then that's going to inspire me, you know what I mean? To be more bold, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think too, to speak to that, maybe someone's not feeling confident to be so bold in the moment, but to invite them, right? In some way, in some gesture, whether it's like, oh, hey, Karen, what do you think about that idea? What would be a wacky, crazy thing to solve that problem? Or the wildest thing you can come up with. And again, it's like, that's the external thing, is creating that space. And it's like, oh, wow, that was fun. That was a great meeting to be in, because I could express and we got all these great ideas and not just sit there and listen to someone. Wah, 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 wah.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Yes. We all felt like we had some peace in the action in
Yeah.
whatever ways, that we felt good showing up. And I agree, when I think we naturally look for those who look the most like us or are the most like us, and to see what they're doing sometimes, especially if we tend towards people pleasing. And so to see somebody else in the room who seems the most like you, stepping out of that comfort zone, showing up, doing things, it's very inspiring. I've definitely been in that situation. And then
Mhm.
I've also been in a situation where I hope that that's what's happening because somebody is looking at me, like I hope that I'm inspiring when I look at people and I say, oh, that was me, 5 years ago, or that was me 10 years ago. What can I do right now to help them along in that journey? Because it is a journey and there's different levels. You have to kind of break through all those levels of
Mhm.
discomfort. Something that
Mhm.
goes along with that, and I want to touch on that before we go into our longer doodle, is like we said in the beginning, there's this vulnerability that has to happen to have real relationship, right? And in the workplace, Brene Brown, of course, has broached this topic for all of us, which is beautiful and wonderful. But still, a lot of us, I think, are struggling very much at the ground level, and our little, maybe these huge corporations are bringing Brene out, but there's a lot of people in very small organizations or people who work collaboratively but are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. Who are still trying to navigate, where is that line? Like, how vulnerable should I be in order, or do I need to be in order to be relational in my leadership style? And when is it okay to be like, I don't need to talk about that. I don't need, people don't need to know everything about me. Just curious what your thoughts are as you've navigated
Mhm.
that.
Well, one thing that I make a point of, if when I meet with people, when they say, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm not immediately say, "I'm fine," or "I'm great. How are you?" I really pause, which is a little disorienting for people or disconcerting, because they're like, and I'm like, "No, no, I really want to think. I want to give you the right, not the right. I want to give you a real answer, you
Mhm.
know." And it's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm having a great day today. I'm feeling great." If
Mhm.
I'm not, I'm going to say that too. Now, if rare is the case, though, not to say this has never happened, it's very rare, but magical when you meet someone for the first time and you feel that you're safe and you can be vulnerable. But I have had to navigate episodic mild depression over the years, and there's a lot of things that trigger it, and my self-care practices help manage that. But if I'm off on that, and then there's triggers and external elements, then it can wreak a little havoc. But if I am not in a good space or struggling, and when someone says, "So how you doing?" It's like, not so good. I lost a big client, or I can't seem to get this offer off the ground. I feel like I'm failing, because I'm not as successful as this other business owner in the same field, and all that kind of stuff. I'm really struggling, whatever it is, or it might not even be work related. Um, but I have found each time I have been that vulnerable, which, believe you me, if we had this conversation, gosh, I would say as recently as 2 years ago, be a different answer. So
Mhm.
it's just been very intentional on my part, but people have been very open-hearted and kind about it.
Mhm.
And the beautiful moments are when they say, can I tell you about my depression? Or
Mhm.
can I tell you about my story of struggle? And that is such a gift, I think.
Absolutely. I think that then, the implications or the impacts that we can have in a workspace with that is that people feel safe to say, I'm not going to be able to meet that deadline. And it's not because I'm lazy or I haven't been working on it or all these other assumptions we might make. It's because this thing just happened to me, or I'm having a depression episode, or something is going on. And even if you don't, I guess, want to go into details, just to be able to name sort of basically what's happening allows for a lot of, I think, when people come to me with that, what happens, I feel compassion, I feel inspired, I feel like, wow, I feel like honored, thanks for feeling like
Mhm,
you can share that with me. Let's see what we can do, to help ease this
mhm,
situation for you. I've told clients before, I'm like, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to communicate, and like, I'm not going to judge. We're just going to come up with the best solution for where you're at.
yeah.
And, and then a few years ago, I had this moment in time where I was like, do I practice this or not? Do I practice what I preach or not? And I was going through a miscarriage, and I had all these deadlines for illustration and also had all these client, coaching sessions. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be honest about what's happening here. I had people respond to me that I was the first person they ever told they had a miscarriage.
Mhm,
Like, I had so much love and support, and I felt like I just didn't even have to think about work for a while. And I felt immediately I was in this new place with several of my clients. We went from client relationship to friendship, like,
mhm.
and yeah, but I do find that was something that wasn't easy to do, and it takes a leap. It takes bravery, and I think it's also okay if you can't get there. Like, it's okay if you can't yet. It's okay to, I guess we talked at the beginning, if you aspire to it.
Mhm.
um, and but it can be so beautiful, to
It
have that
can be that
connection.
the connection with someone who is
Mm.
not like one of your nearest and dearest, but that humanity that can come out
Yes.
of it. And I think in our workplaces, there's such a separation of church and state, right?
Mhm.
So you're a worker here and you're a person when you're not here. But to even have the vulnerability in a digital space, if that's how people are convening, and giving space to that, I don't know if we know how to do that. And I think it
Yeah, and I
would be.
think it could be simple too, like, it doesn't have to be, it could be this, like, actually say, let's all check in, take a moment to pause. Where are you at today? Like, I think a lot of people fear that it's going to lower productivity, that it's going to interfere with getting the job done. Um, but the thing that I think I try to always, because, I've been in many work situations. I've been in leadership too. And I felt those fears coming up, like, oh, this person is calling off again,
Mm,
and it makes my day a little stressful, extra stressful if they call off. Now I gotta find a sub, blah, 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 like all the things. And but if we can sort of remember that, we all go through those times, then what I think actually happens is not only that we all go through those times, but sometimes we're going through those times and we're not talking about it. So it's still happening. All we're doing now is actually talking about it, so that it's likely that the same results are going to happen whether you talk about it or not.
right.
But if you talk about it, then guess what? Now people aren't as upset by it, less frustrated, and new routes can be made that actually support the person who's going through it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's a really, really big topic, but I just wanted to open up that can of worms at the end of this
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you. Oh, there's my doodle.
So we're gonna take that into our longer doodle.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna invite everybody for a moment to close your eyes. Let's take that pause in our day. You just empty your hands and relax, take some nice deep breaths. And one thing you can do is you can take your pointer finger and your thumb together on both hands and very lightly rub them together, focusing your attention on the sensations. This is a really simple, mindful activity that you can do in any situation. You can do it under your desk, if you're at work, if you're on Zoom, nobody even has to know. But it is a way of calming that nervous system when we are experiencing discomfort. And when we're talking about relational leadership, there is a lot of discomfort. There is a lot of love and beautiful things, but there's a lot of discomfort in being that vulnerable, as we were just discussing. So as you are calming yourself down, I want you to start to envision yourself and the next version of you growing as a relational leader. Somebody who's really stepping in and embracing this part of leadership. Who are you stepping into this role with, for, and how is that affecting what's going on around you? Whatever you picture in the space is okay. Sometimes we don't think it's even related to what we're contemplating, but just trust it. Just go with whatever comes up here. And as you start to get some ideas or see some things, go ahead and blink your eyes open. And we're going to follow this doodle for the next 5 minutes. And I say follow this doodle. I don't want you to figure everything out. I just want you to start with a little bit of inspiration from what you saw and see where it takes you over the next 5 minutes. See what unfolds. It'll be something magical, I assure you. Dennise, I'm hoping that you will play my favorite doodle game with me, which
Okay,
is we hold each other, like I'll hold mine up, you hold yours up one at a time, and we invite the other person to say what they see in it first before we say anything about it. Are you
I'll
game?
do it. I'm
All
game.
right. All right. Do you want to go first?
Okay.
Okay. Oh man. So I see like it looks like I see two things immediately. One, it looks like this really happy person spreading the love and lots of smiley people and heart and love. But I also see that person becoming like a tree. Like her arms are like branches and all the people are like all the leaves on this tree, which is really awesome because trees are just the coolest symbolism, I think, all the time. For what we're aspiring to, for what roots us, what's our foundation. Is that like I feel like I'm missing something at the top and something at the bottom.
That's the other
Oh, that's
draw.
your other doodle. And that's like the world. Oh, so it's kind of interesting. Like I feel like your doodles are going together a little bit with this world. And it's interesting in that like the top one, she is big and bold all by herself. But in this one, she's big and bold still, but she has so many people around her and creatures, these lovely birds. And I like how this one dude has a happy face inside of himself. Like he's happy on the inside. And the birds are super sweet. I don't know, it's so way to go. The encouraging messages. So maybe as you grow, it's going to be very create a much more thriving, nurturing environment for yourself and for everyone around you. What are your thoughts? It's coming up in your doodle as you were doodling it.
Yes. The tree thing, no, but hey, I could see that sounds great. I love that because you're right. Trees are so stoic and stable and wise and sturdy.
But also weirdly flexible, like they would break
Yes.
if
In
they,
storms, they
yeah,
move, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
they have
Yes,
to.
totally.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, everything is like it goes back to I think the very beginning collaboration. We're not in this alone. It's all of us. And to be a leader, know your joy and keep an open heart. And this is celebrating and acknowledging, but it's also saying, hey, having a little trouble, I'm here for you too. But it's just, and it's what makes the world amazing that we're all in this together.
Yeah. It makes me think about too how if you exude sort of that energy, then that's what's going to come back to you too. That's what you'll notice. That's what your network will start to be. That's who starts to show up and surround you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's easier to get through the harder things when that happens. So, oh,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's mine. And I totally followed my own advice in this because I wanted to demonstrate and because I didn't have a lot of clear. Sometimes I get a really clear visual and sometimes I don't. And
Okay.
sometimes I just follow a shape that I see and it's more abstract and I like interpreting those too. So it's a little bit more abstract, I would say.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's beautiful. So see the circles is like amplifying something and all these different swirly energies and love. Um, the bright star is like a bright possibility and potential. And it's sort of the brightness is holding all this love and creativity. And it's multiplying.
Mm.
That's my take. And the colors are beautiful and bright and bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So the first thing that I saw were just these three lines like that. And I'm like, what are those? So it's fun to see how you interpreted those as like an amplification. Some ways I was like, are they going to be ripples? Are they barriers that we're breaking?
Okay.
Are they levels? I think there's a million things they could probably be, but all of them are kind of cool when we think about it in this way. And I like what you brought up about it, like the being bold. And that's something I was thinking about, like the softer hearts came out first, but I was also like, there's strength and there's a lot of bravery that we've been talking about too. So one has to have like one's power has to be ready to
Yes.
turn on, it isn't always the soft, sweet thing. Sometimes it is like a no, or this is what I want,
Mhm.
And for me, I just think that all of those things lead to creativity. This is like my spirals could be the process of like pausing and going in, but it's also, I don't know, I always think of them as a very creative symbol too, expansion and what's possible.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'm
Love
excited to
it.
kind of hang it up and ponder it. I always
Yes,
encourage
I
that you
don't,
all do
yeah, I
that.
wish mine looked like that.
It can, like, you just play with
I
it. I
know,
don't know. It
I
just,
know.
these help. You
Yeah, get some color
know.
markers. I was quickly grabbing what I had here, but
Which
yeah,
is
yeah,
perfect. That's all a doodle really needs, right?
exactly,
Yeah. So,
exactly.
if you guys want to share your doodles, we always love to see them. You can email me or send us a link to something that you posted on social media. If you did what your vision of going to the next level of relational leadership looks like, we'd love to see that. Thank you, Dennise. This has been a really beautiful conversation. And I appreciate you going on this doodle journey with me.
Thank you. I had so much fun. I clearly do not doodle enough. So that's something
If that's your
I,
takeaway, I'm fine with it.
yeah.
Well, Dennise would also love to offer you a strategy chat. In this one-to-one session, she will review your issue and talk about some possible options, which is pretty cool. She'll also connect you with several resources based on the topic. This is one thing I really enjoy about Dennise. She always wants to make sure that you leave with something helpful, no matter what. She's a relational leadership in practice too, right? And, she's also going to, when you call her for that, she's also going to record that session so that you can keep it for review. And I think that's such a great idea. How many times do we have this awesome conversation with people and then forget everything that was said? So I'm going to include the link for getting your strategy chat in the show notes, as well as all the other ways that you can connect with Dennise. So thank you everyone for watching and doodling to doing with us today. You can find out more about our creations and coaching at howdoodle.com. But until next time, keep cultivating your inner artist to leave your life and work in more fulfilling ways.